This week I had what I thought was a good video idea. I was gonna take one story idea and turn it into 5 stories in 5 different genres. They were gonna be fantasy, horror, sci-fi, romance, and comedy. Tell me that's not a good idea. Tell me that's not a good idea. That's a good idea for a video, right? Well, here's the thing. As I started developing the idea for the first genre, fantasy, I started to realize that this idea was so good that it might not be worth trying to write it for 5 different genres like that. I was getting so much inspiration and I was seeing so many opportunities to include all these genres, almost all of them, into the story. For example, fantasy as the base, as the main genre, yes, but I was starting to see opportunities to include horror elements into it and romance into it, even some comedy into it. So I started to think, like, I don't want to write a potentially worse story just to fit some arbitrary challenge I set to myself by writing in a specific genre and not including the other genres so they're clearly defined for the video idea. That would make a much worse story. And that's when, the decision came in. Should I stick to the video? A video that in my mind has potential to do well on my YouTube channel, or should I go all in on this one idea that's turned from a story to a novella, potentially a book, and really follow my passion? This is a perfect example of what I call the curse of the creative. Let me explain. Everyone knows that making a living in the creative industry is incredibly difficult, whether that's being an actor or a musician, artist in general, like a painter, or a writer like me. It is extremely hard. Now, let's be clear. All careers are extremely hard, especially if you want to be the best of the best, right? If you want to really be the best that you can possibly be. But the difference is, for example, if you're a salesperson, sure, being the top salesperson in your company or being the top salesperson in your industry, super difficult, yes. But the difference is, if you're an average salesman or a below average salesperson, you can still make a living. You're not going to be unable to put food on the table in most cases in our Western world, right? But with something like writing, it's not usually the case. Albeit, let me do a disclaimer, because there are average writers who make a killing monetarily just because they may be really good at business or really good at marketing. Meanwhile, there are fantastic writers who are amazingly skilled, but they earn nothing because they're lacking some of the skills that you need to go around your writing skill. So when I talk about the creative industry being difficult, I am generalizing, because your success is not completely always dependent on the actual creative skill you are pursuing. There are other things around it that you need to learn that can help you gain success. That's the reason why, although it is difficult, it is easier to make a living in the creative industry now than it was, say, 20 years ago. For example, 20 years ago, the power of gaining attention was just in the hands of a few big companies, and if you weren't in that little club, then you didn't succeed. But now that power has been democratized almost, and now it's in our hands, and with time, effort, we can make a living for ourselves. So it is easier than it used to be. However, a big however, if you look around on the internet and look at the amount of artists selling and making a living off their art on social media, it is much less than, say, educators, people who sell online courses, who sell coaching programs. The truth of the matter is, being an entertainer or a artist or a creative selling their creations is much harder to gain traction, and then much harder to monetize the audience once you have got it. I should know, last year I quit my job with the goal to pursue my own business full-time. I always wanted to be a writer. I've wanted to be a writer since I was a child, but I always had this feeling of, I'll do something, make money, make a living, and then become a writer. I'll use the money that I make from something else, a business, because I've always wanted to have my own business, make money from something else, put it into my writing. And that is the idea I had when I left my job. I started on LinkedIn giving educational advice to other writers on how to write, how to build ideas, books, etc. And I added 1,000 followers in less than 3 weeks. I had people joining my newsletter. I was on the path to make a profitable education business. All I had to do was start releasing digital products. People were asking me questions, people were asking me for advice. It was not easy. I was working hard, 12, 16 hours days. I was doing a lot. And then I realized every career is hard. And sure, that path would have probably given me more security faster. But if I'm going to put that much effort into something, then why not put that same amount of effort, maybe even more, but still, into the real thing, the true thing that I want to do, which is be a fiction writer and be a creative and create videos like this and express my creativity, not in that rigid business sense that I was starting to do there. The thing was though, I was willing to take the risk, so I pivoted. I moved to YouTube. I started doing what I'm doing now. I started focusing on more entertainment content on YouTube. Meanwhile, writing stories, building my books. I have a different newsletter. It's just stories. And sure, I've been doing it for 7 months and I haven't seen a dime yet. But still, I am happier than I was doing the education thing, and I'm happier than I was in employed work. Now, I truly believe I can gain the success that I want, but whether that will be in 1 year or 5 years or 10 years, I don't know. And honestly, I think it will be closer to the 10 years than the 1, because this is a long game. It is difficult, it's risky, and although it potentially has unlimited upside, it could amount to nothing. Not only that, but sure, it has massive upside, but the graph looks like this for a long time until you start seeing anything. At least with some other businesses, some other paths you can go, it looks just slightly going up, very slowly, but at least you're getting something before you can hit that growth. Often with creativity, with writing, with something like this, you see close to nothing. The same happens with comedians, the same happens with actors, with musicians, all of these. So with all that being said, we come back to the video. I've set myself a challenge today. I know as well as you do that if you are creative, you want to do things that you're passionate about. You want to follow your creativity, go where your heart tells you. But at the same time, if you're doing what I'm doing, then you know that you need to build an audience, and there are rules to the game. There are best practices to follow. If you don't grow an audience, then no one will know who you are, and then you won't be able to continue following your dream. So when you have what you think is a great video idea, I'm gonna take one story idea and turn it into 5 different stories in completely different genres. This is gonna be interesting. I'm excited for this. But then your passion and creativity is telling you to stop that idea and throw it away mid-filming. This idea is developing into something I didn't think it was going to. I'm loving it, and I don't want to curb my creativity for the sake of a video. You have a big decision to make. Do you stick to the plan and maybe this project won't fit exactly what you want to do, but it's in line with the plan, in line with the strategy? Or do you throw it away and follow your passion? Both paths are valid depending on the situation, and it's a struggle that we have to deal with consistently day to day. For me, I'm more willing to pivot and follow where my passion is taking me, because I know that I am not going to stop. I don't know if I will gain success or when I will gain success, but I know that I'm not going to stop. So I'm more willing to experiment, to follow my passion, to see where it takes me. However, not just wildly. We'll see how it goes, because this is developing in ways that is taking on a mind of its own, So we'll see. In this case, I decided to reframe the video. So instead of a challenge video of writing one idea in 5 different genres, I'm doing this and I'm talking about the experience and reframing the video to work. Meanwhile, it's allowing me to fully put all my effort into this, what's turning from a story to a novella to possibly a novel, and really put all my effort to make that as good as I can, and then I will eventually release it on my newsletter. And I am very happy with that decision, because when I put all my effort into something and write it to the best of my ability, is it really worth rewriting it in another genre, following the same story beats, just maybe a different setting and a slightly different tropes, just for... Isn't it better to take that creative energy and put it into something new? That's what I think. A new story that will be better, that I'm improving, that is adding to my library of work. To me, it's not worth it to rewrite it. I should go and push forward and keep moving. The curse of the creative is that we will face this choice tomorrow and the next day and the next day. It's heart versus strategy. And I am starting to believe that making that choice correctly day after day after day is the actual difference between the people who gain success and the people who don't.